Welcome to our session on ePortfolios, and really we're going to take you through this workshop. We're going to take you through the process of really building your ePortfolio. So what it comprises, what are the things that you need to include in your ePortfolio, and then also what are the platforms you might want to consider to build your ePortfolio. And of course, I'm doing this with Mr. Mohammed as well, who you heard earlier. So very happy about that. So we're gonna have some fun today. All right. If along the way you would like to ask any questions, by all means, feel free to do so. You can just raise your hand, or you could use a mic and or the chat, whichever is comfortable for you. All right. Will today's session have a refresher on embedding? I think we could include that as well. So we're going to show you embedding what in terms of embedding into your website, into your ePortfolio site. If so, yes, no problem at all. So just stick a pin in that. So if we forget, just make mention of it, right? So, all right, so let's just get straight into it. Now, you guys know I like to start with a bit of an icebreaker. All right, and I'm gonna paste the link in the chat. Let me just get that here. I'm not sure why my thing is. One sec. Let's get back my link. All right, so let's get straight into it. You should see a link in the chat. And that link should take you to a word cloud. All right, let me know if you get that. And as you add things to it, the word cloud will continue to be amended. Can you see it? Let me know if you get the poll, if it comes up for you. What are you seeing, or what is coming up on your side? It should be your answer to the question. So feel free to talk to me, use your mics or the chat, and we'll take it from there. Can you hear me? You're a little quiet.
Hi, Justin. Yes, we're hearing you fine. Thanks.
Great. So did you see the poll?
Yes, I did. I was able to open it and complete accordingly.
All right, great. So let me just present the results thus far. Bring this down. And I'm going to change my screen to show you this. All right, so this is what it looks like here. So we have, oh, most persons had chicken. Okay, I guess that's the meat of the day. All right, so most persons had chicken, a sandwich. Some person said nothing. Ooh, so you're running on E, I guess. Hopefully it's not too, this session will not be too onerous for you. Someone said pak choy, cereal, bhaji, okay, dumpling, green peas, dry cassava, vegetables, not one thing. Not one thing, and I like how they spelled it too. Okay, all right, barbecue. Okay, somebody really had it. Goat, Nesquik. Okay, rice. Okay, so I mean you could use your microphones now. What about that lunch stood out to you? What about it Feeling for bhaji rice now. Yes, Javi. Yes. And a little Jira chicken on the side too. No, just kidding. But or a little dal, you know. So what stood out to you about lunch? When you think about lunch, what you had for lunch, some of you had chicken, some of you had rice, goat, potato, cereal, dumplings, etc. What stood out to you about your whatever you had for lunch? And you can use the chat or your microphone, either is fine. What stood out to you about lunch? And maybe I need to call some names, okay, to move the process along. So it tasted really good today, especially. Okay, so today was unique for Janelle. How so, Janelle? What about it made it particularly good today?
Yeah, I don't know if it's because I was hungry. So, you know, when you're hungry and you eat something, they say it.
Okay. All right, Akil. So you had chicken breast. It was soft to the texture. Okay, I like the attention to detail. Mr. Mohammed said he can relate to Camille. It tasted good but boring. Okay, what made it boring, Camille? Is it that what? It was the flavor was bland?
No, the flavor was good. It's just the aesthetics of it.
Oh, okay. Take it as you find it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So the aesthetics could have been a little improved. Nadia said, well, look, Nadia had something else. She had prepackaged and ideal on the go. So it served a particular situation or function. Yeah. Let's see what else we have in the chat. I don't know, Mr. Mohammed, I don't know if you're seeing anything that I probably missed. Patrice,
No.
you said it was not surprisingly, sorry, it was surprisingly not dry. Okay. You want to elaborate on that, Patrice?
Yes. So yeah, I had barbecue chicken, bhaji rice, and vegetables. And while eating, I was thinking to myself, this meal is surprisingly very succulent and moist. I was thinking the bhaji rice may have been a bit dry, but everything was actually pretty full of moisture. So that was good.
Okay. Was it store-bought or you made it or someone made it for you?
It was Pecco's prepackaged.
Okay. Don't call the name of the people. I'm just playing.
Sorry for advertising.
I'm just playing. Okay, no, that's good. And you know, I'm seeing another bhaji rice succulent. Okay, that's no, if you get some good bhaji rice, it could be, you know. So good. I like where we're going with this. So Patrice said exactly. You guys are making me laugh today, boy, a lot. So, okay, so when we think about that, you're reflecting, basically that's what we were doing. Reflecting on your lunch, right? I see Dr. Hill. He had some nice prepackaged blue water, cold and refreshing. All right, Dr. Hill, let's make this an example as well. So when you think of the water, the nice prepackaged water you had for lunch, how does it compare to other waters you had in the past?
Well, it definitely doesn't compare with the Perrier water.
Or the sparkling
I
water.
I would take longer to drink this kind of water.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
It wasn't effervescent.
It had a little oomph in it. All right, good. So the reason I wanted to do this, and you'll see me refer to this throughout today's workshops, because this is all part of reflective practice. So we do it all the time. Every time we look back, or we whether it's on lunch, a conversation we had, something you wore, right? You know, like you like to take selfies now in an age of that. So, you know, look at the selfie and it's really a look back at what was, right? And that in itself is part and parcel of reflective practice. This particular session, we're going to look at it from a different angle, of course, as it pertains to your building an e-portfolio. So for this particular session, we have these outcomes here. So we're going to look at the components of a teaching portfolio, just as we mentioned, for example, the water that Dr. Hill mentioned, or the bhaji rice and barbecue chicken that Patrice made mention of. So for example, Patrice, you looked at the components of that meal. whether the bhaji rice was dry, whether the chicken was dry or well seasoned, I imagine. In Dr. Hill's case, whether the water was effervescent or if the water was just plain water or the brand of the water. So we're going to look at things like that. And so it's the same principle, but just channeled now to teaching and learning. All right. And of course, draft a teaching philosophy. At least start it. All right. Drafting a teaching portfolio will be useful for applying for exactly and teaching positions. Yes, Camille, and we actually have that later on. That's no problem. We have that later on in this particular session where we sort of highlight some of the benefits. So maybe you might want to take a lead there. I'm delegating, right? So that's perfectly fine. So we're going to also assess the different items that can be included in your teaching portfolio. And of course, start the creation of a page in terms of building your ePortfolio site. So some of you may have created an ePortfolio site already, and now it's really about building the web content or knowing what to put on your ePortfolio site, how to add the bells and whistles, make it look and feel really good, the layout and the navigation and so on. And so we're going to look at all of those things today. All right, so let's go straight ahead. The first part of this session, we're going to look at the tenets of your portfolio, what the web content basically. And then part two, we're going to look at building it. So adding the bells and whistles, as I mentioned earlier, the features, the platforms, etc. Now, I'm going to give you just a couple seconds to just find just a blank page. Doesn't have to be a whole long book, but at least have a notepad and a Google account. You may want to log into that if you haven't done so yet. All right, but definitely, and you'll have time to log into your Gmail account if you have one. If not, we'll also walk you through that. And we will also, but you definitely need to have pen and paper. All right, or pencil and paper, because it's reflective, it's iterative. So you're gonna be we'll do it together, Camille. Don't worry, I wouldn't put you under pressure. All right, I wouldn't leave you in the deep to sink. All right, so let not your heart be troubled. So let's get straight into it. All right. Has everyone gotten a pen and paper or pencil and paper? Because you're gonna have a couple activities along the way.
Yes.
All right, good. Where you would need to take note of certain things. All right. So when we think of reflective practice and reflective writing, and I just want to say this, well, Dr. Hill is here, so Dr. Hill, you could chime in, of course. I know this is part of your baby here as well. So when we think of reflective practice and reflective writing, there are different models that we can use in reflective writing. All right, of course, reflective writing is premised on it's part and parcel of reflective practice. So it's under the umbrella of reflective practice. Now, one such model is called Rolf's model. And I know some of the Cuttle persons might be familiar with this. So maybe I could call on some of you. Let's see, Akil, do you want to explain what we know about Rolf's model in terms of what? That part, at least? You want to take a shot?
Yeah, I probably can. You're basically here talking about examining what happened in the actual session.
Right.
So yeah, your intentions is to assess exactly what went on in the session before you move on to analyzing the so what.
Very good. Very good. So it's basically looking at the event, whatever that event might be it may be a phenomenon within your session, your lecture, your teaching session, your tutorial. All right. What about it? What? So the next part, of course, is so what? So almost like what is the significance of it? So you identify the event, the significance of the event, or what actually happened, and then what you're going to do about it. That'll be the now what. And to bring further explanation, I decided to overlay this. So you're looking at the event, that is the what, all right? Or even if, let's say, for example, a teaching, you may have integrated a particular technology tool, or you want to look at engagement or some particular phenomenon in your teaching practice or in your particular session, all right? And I'm saying this also, juxtaposing this with peer observation as well, which we looked at yesterday because remember, this is all part of our teaching and learning week on reflective practice. So it's a similar approach where you identify a particular strategy or approach or whatnot, And then of course the so what? Why is it so significant? Why is it, what about it stood out to you? Yeah. And then after that, we're going to look at now what. Now what is really explaining how will you use this information to inform your future practice? Yeah. So what about it is so significant that it can change the way you go forward? All right.
Yeah, and if I could add, Dr.
right ahead.
Dr. Zephyrin, this is the point where you would perhaps look at the perceived impact as well. You've done this, even though you're looking into the future, you can write around what has been the perceived impact of that and the evidence. You need to give evidence in grounding that. I know that this has been impactful because I have seen XXX, or I have been able to see a transformation in how students relate to certain things. So you give those as examples. And I do know we have Mr. Mark Garcia here, who is a champion of our course experience review. This is one of those things that you would use. You can get the opportunity to really zoom in on the reflection from the eyes of others. So your students are very, very powerful means of validating the perceived impact, because it's a perception, of course. But you're grounding it in evidence.
Exactly. And I would venture to say, Dr. Hill, and you could chime in as well here, that I think reflective practice, but sorry, not just reflective practice, but reflective writing sort of undergirds whether it's your practice, your teaching practice, but it might also extend to even peer observation, because there is some sort of documentation that you have to do, yeah? Likewise for the ePortfolio. So reflective writing is whatever the avenue you use, whether it's peer observation, the ePortfolio, or even action research, which we've looked at throughout the teaching and learning week thus far. Reflective writing is part and parcel of it. Yeah.
And there's always a temptation to always overemphasize the what, to be very descriptive, and not really critically engaging with the so what and the now what. And I think this is why the model exists. But in doing so, you really want to more or less project forward, because that is what really makes the reflective writing process transformative from that standpoint, because you really want to use it in saying, okay, I did recognize some shortfalls, and this is what I intend to do to address some of those areas. So you can actually be very, very transparent about that.
Yeah, absolutely right. And
Camille is saying just that as well, sort of like a monitoring and evaluation of your work. Is you're giving an impact of your own work, of your own reflective account.
And even if and you know, it goes beyond just, as you said as well, the what, in terms of even if you found you were impactful in that what, so the event, you know, you realize, okay, you looked at this, or you wanted to look at this, and you found it was impactful, students will engage or participated or whatnot. But then the so what part, if you go a step further, we'll look at ways, let's say, for example, how you can improve. All right, even if you were impactful, how can you become more effective in what you know what I mean? So it's
sorry, go ahead.
So it's never, it's iterative. There's never
it is.
absolute.
Yes, I think also this is where you would draw on, again, through the lens of others, but this is from a scholarship of teaching and learning. You are grounding your evidence in using, obviously, the thinking that others have established in the area, that you reflect on that from that standpoint. So that is part of the sort of grounding your thinking or rationale in why you're gonna do what you're doing. You know, very intentional from that standpoint.
And thank you so much for that. And another model here. So we have Rolf's model, and Rolf's model has gone through several iterations as well. So you may see other names affiliated with it. But it's just one of the several models as well. This is another model, the deal model. Now those who know me here at CTL, they know that I like a good sale, right? But this is a different kind of deal. So the deal model sort of highlights, well, you see here, 3 different phases or approaches. So again, description and an examination and the articulation of learning. So I think the first 2 sort of self-explanatory, but when you say articulation of learning or articulate learning, in other words, what have you learned from this experience after going through you went through the event, the experience, then you looked at it through the lens of academic, and even I would venture to say using Brookfield's approach, different lenses, all right? But what does it all mean to you? What have you gleaned or learned from it? And why is it important? And we see that again, why is it important? So that is the so what in Rolf's model. And that may even extend to, well, it's important because it provided insight for you as an educational practitioner, and this is what you're going to do moving forward. Yeah. So this is another model that you may consider in reflective writing. So it's the same process. You describe the experience. Really, you go beyond the description, then you go to an analysis or examination of the experience, so some of the implications of it, why it was so significant, etc. And then the next level, articulate learning, which is sort of the impact of it. Yeah, what you learned and what you can move forward with, that sort of thing. Any comments or any thoughts on this one? I don't know, Dr. Hill, Mr. Mohammed, anybody, or even
Well, I could see this one has the why, but again, I think the most powerful part is the evaluative component of what you're doing.
Yes,
That's very, very important. That's often one of the areas that's often lacking in our reflective practice. We would very, very well give the description. We would very well talk through the ends academic, but when it comes to really
when I
step further and saying, I know that this approach has been effective or impactful, or I know this needs additional effort because I am able to see XXX. Because it's that sort of mosaic, that sort of dance that takes place between the lived experience, but jumping to the evaluation, as Camille has rightly said, is an important. You need, just as you end your lesson and your students evaluate, that sort of writing process needs that kind of evaluative component in it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I just, as we wrap up this segment, this is another model. All right. The DIPE model. And of course, again, it emphasizes it builds on Rolf's model as well. And so you see it here. So describe what happened, describe what did you do, then interpret it. And if you assimilate that to the previous model, the deal model, right? This is basically what does it mean? What's the significance of this experience for you? As the educator, as the thinker, as the academic, or whatever it might be. And why does it have so much meaning for you? Why is it so impactful? So for example, if you apply, just make an example of it. So what happened? What did you do? It may be you decided to integrate a particular technology tool. All right, let's say you use poll everywhere, as we just saw, right? And you notice that persons were more participatory and, and engaged and so on. What does this experience mean to you? Is it that, okay, it's something that you may consider, it led to greater engagement? So that might be part of it. All right. And you kind of have some idea of one way in which students might be engaged. How valuable was the experience for you? Why did it resonate with you? Maybe based on the course experience review, as Dr. Hill mentioned with Mark and so on, maybe it was it showed up in the data, students' feedback, that the classes could be a little more, they found the classes could be a little more engaging. So you see where it's going there. And then the plan, what will you do with what you learn now, what you now know? Yeah, and how will you do it? So will you continue to use poll everywhere, or whatever technology tool that might be? So you see, it starts with what just happened, the past, the present, where you start to interpret and evaluate things, and then the future, where you plan the way forward. Any questions or any comments that Dr. Hill, you want to chime in? and this is the big thing about this particular model, which is what Dr. Hills has been saying as well, that the emphasis is on the future plan of action or the future action, what you're going to do about it, where do we go from here? Yeah. So consider what we looked at just now, these three models, and you can place in the chat what stood out to you in those three models. What are some of the salient and or similar features in each amongst these three models? So we can place it in the chat, or you can use your mic. Anyone is fine. Let's see. I don't know if persons are typing, I believe, maybe. You need to start it by being descriptive. Yes, thank you so much for that, Janelle. Yes, you state what is or what just happened, right? So basically you're stating facts. All right. Almost like
yeah, and sometimes in the what you give the how as well.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, you unpack it.
Yes.
Because especially if you're given an examination of what was done, the reader who is reading your e-portfolio, it could be for an award, it could be for whatever,
Right.
needs a clear idea of how did you go about doing that what. And I think
Exactly.
that's an important thing that we need to be clear about in that as well.
Especially when we connect it to action research, because you need to detail, you know, how and what and why. If you're going to look at publications, because that's the long-term goal of this to an extent, from an action research part of it. There's the saying, work smart, don't just work hard, work smart. So it would help as part of your reflective practice. It can feed or lead into publications as well. All right. If you do it thoroughly. Yeah. And it's literally, it's kind of like, I don't want to say kill two birds because we want to encourage violence against animals, but you get what I'm saying, two for the price of one, right? Let's see what the chat says. Pamela said, the aim is to examine the experience, but to move beyond that to ascertain how this experience can lead to improve. Oh, nice. Well said, Pamela. Well said. Yes. yes, Mark. And I have that as well. So this is just a plug, Mr. Garcia is saying, but we'll do it in due time. But for those of you who might be interested, we have a session on action research tomorrow. So I was trying to bridge that gap to connect it as well, Mark. So yes, I got you. So this part of the reflective writing process feeds into not just your e-portfolio, but also action research, peer observation, as Dr. Jones, who's here as well, highlighted earlier. And so you're definitely right for those responses that we got thus far. So basically,
as well as your reflective account of professional practice, your RAP.
Yes. I would also say, and I think somebody mentioned it in the chat, it's also good for employment purposes too.
Yes.
So, and we'll get into all of that later on. So I just wanted to highlight some of the models and the reflective writing part of it, because if you don't write, then without documentation, there's no evidence, as Dr. Hill mentioned. There's no way for you to go back and measure what you're doing with what you did and what was the impact of it all. All right.
And I would perhaps add there, Dr. Zephyrin, is that when we write, it actually forces us to think.
Yes.
And
go ahead.
think intentionally about certain things. I mean, for me, that sort of pivot from writing pencil, when I pick up a pencil, is sort of things that begins to happen. Well, it no longer happens now, but when I get to the keyboard, that sort of thinking begins to take place. So I think this is where we may want to really give the need for us to take note, or journaling. Sometimes it's called journaling, but certainly it's important for us to not ignore the need for us to write. Write is powerful. Writing is very, very powerful. Yeah.
And before I go to Andrea's comment, just to build on that as well, I think I want to make this point as well, that there's no one way to document or to write. There are different approaches work for different people. For some people, you might, after you teach a lesson and you start to reflect, you might just jot down some points, right? For others, they might do a full-fledged journal. For others, it might be sort of a stream of consciousness experience as they reflect on that particular experience. So for some people, it might be just a voice recording of their thoughts. So you can experiment. If you're not used to it, you can do it in different ways, but once you document it, all right? And Andrea was saying in the chat that not all experiences you might recount or recall with joy. Some of them might be, you know, have you ever been in a situation where you said something, you were speaking to someone or some people and you said something that maybe you didn't mean to say or came out wrong or mispronounced a word or whatever it might be. And then you reflect on it and you probably look at it with a little bit of embarrassment, or you might laugh at yourself if you're that kind of person as well. I'm sure some of you could relate, yeah? I know within the office in CTL, some of us make a practice of that. So yes, and Camille is agreeing with Andrea. Sometimes you're not always going to be looking back or writing about something that is pleasurable. Yeah. So it's almost like looking back at your previous writing. Have you ever looked back at an essay you wrote however many years ago? And then you sometimes question, like, did I wrote this? Like, you know. So that's part of the process. All right. So don't feel don't feel, you know, it's part of the process. And it's just you being real with yourself as you write. Akil is saying, the models all require you to make intentional. Oh, yes, Akil, I like that. Make intentional changes for improvement and to maintain what is working well. And yeah, that's basically it in a nutshell. That's basically it in a nutshell. Almost like you trying to upgrade yourself or upgrade your practice. Yeah, your teaching practice. Dr. Jones says the concept of writing is inquiry. As inquiry comes to mind, it could facilitate deep interrogation. Yes, whether that interrogation comes from like a self-interrogation or from a collegial standpoint, let's say a peer or a colleague that what was the word we used in the panel discussion, Dr. Hill? A critical friend. All right. So that way, you know, and the critical friend may question you or ask you, you know, and you might have a good rapport with someone you trust, all right, who can give you that sort of honest feedback. Pamela said,
I'd really like to Jabba put
ahead.
something that have me thinking. I don't know what he means by past writing horrible, present writing not so horrible. What he means by that, I don't know.
Java, do you want to elaborate?
Oh no, well, Dr. Zephyrin, he was talking about your past papers. You wrote a paper
Oh, okay,
10 years
okay.
ago, and it would be horrible. And then when you evaluate the present, you might say, okay, it's not so horrible. You see some improvement.
Yeah, no, it's true. If you have written, let's say, for example, a dissertation or, you know, a paper or whatnot, you may, at that point in time when you just wrote it, or when you have just written it, you may think, okay, it's not the best, but it could, you know, it's good enough. And then let's say 3, 4, 5 years further down, you realize, oh my goodness, look at this, and you see whatever errors, or you see, you know, what could have been explained in a better way, for example. And it's the same thing with your teaching. You will always look back and look to make improvements. Yeah.
And I really like what Dr. Jones has said as the inquiry. Because you may very well use that bad writing, Javed, and cite it. And it becomes evidence of that transformation that this is where what I reflected on. And you can really desperately make yourself bare and vulnerable in displaying that as evidence and cite it. You cite it using the proper citation method, and
yes,
it becomes a very, very way of inquiry and deep interrogation of even your own previous self.
right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And I see Patricia saying Rob's model seems more practical. Yes, it usually is seen that way. DIPE is a little more reflective and so on. So whichever model works for you, I wouldn't say one is better is the best, because it would vary for different persons, you know what I mean? And the different functions, intentions of the reflective practice. Yeah, but they all have they're all grounded in common principles of describing the event, documenting what it means to you, and the impact of it. Where do we go from here? That would be interesting, Camille, to use two models together to use a sort of triangulation. What do you think about that, Dr. Hill?
I think that's creative, and you
I
could
think so.
actually use no model actually, or
Yeah,
use your own model. The thing is that you have a framework in which to help you write, and I think that's the challenge. We recognize that
absolutely.
writing can be a challenge for some of us, and so the framework helps to really
guide.
serve as a scaffold in
Exactly.
allowing you to make that jump quite
Mhm.
easier, so you wouldn't forget anything, or you
And
wouldn't leave out any part, important part.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why I wanted to highlight the three models and allow you to synthesize the salient points that they all seem to be saying.
Yeah.
Because even you may not even, as Dr. Hill said, you may not even use a model, or you might use a model and not even know you're using a model.
Yeah, yeah.
But the point is that you have these three main things that you want to guide your writing, your reflective writing. Yeah.
And there is that thinking as well of the feelings part, of the emotional part
Yeah.
that we go through. And that is sometimes also not very explicit, but in Gibbs' model, it's quite explicit.
Yes.
So again, these are some of the things that persons may say, okay, I'm writing all the time, but I don't want to be talking about how I felt about this. And so forth.
Touchy-feely all the time. Yeah. But you wonder, well, why are we doing this? Why is it important?
Yes,
You know?
yes.
So yes, you're absolutely right. Shamala said, create your own model, that conceptual model, using some aspects of others to suit your, yeah, that's perfectly fine. And then you can do an action, you can do a paper for that and then publish it in our journal, which has been, what's the word I'm looking for? Reestablished or revamped. The Caribbean Teaching Scholar, Mark, I hope I got the word right, but you can
Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
So that's perfectly fine as well, Shamala. You can come up with your own model and what works for you and just document it, and it can even lead into a publication in the long run. All right. So thank you so much for that. Now we go into the ePortfolio in terms, and more specifically, a teaching portfolio. Now, what is it? It's really a full-fledged documentation. I wouldn't say it's a statement it's more than just a statement, I would say, from a linguistic or language stance, not so Patrice, but it certainly is documentation of your teaching responsibilities, your teaching philosophy, some of your awards or accomplishments or grants even, and generally just your experiences and your trajectory as an educator. Yeah. And I like to use that word, it's a journey, because your teaching and learning, and even your reflective practice, it's an ongoing journey. Yeah, we are lifelong learners. So it's really about your trajectory as an educational practitioner, right? It is a sample of what makes you a great. Okay, yeah, I like that's that take on it. Very good, Andrea. Thank you for that. Now, why, and we was kind of alluding to this earlier, why is a teaching portfolio useful? We sort of mentioned it before, and if you can think of any other things outside of what we have here, feel free to mention it in the chat. It definitely serves for, let's look at the short term maybe, in terms of reflection and improvement, so constant improvement. It could promote collaboration. So let's say you did it with, you're doing it with a peer, all right? It promotes collaboration. Let's say if you have a shared goal or outcome of the entire process, for example, co-teaching, co-facilitation, etc. And it provides insight to your teaching effectiveness or how you improve as a teacher, as an educator. In the long term, this can feed into, as we mentioned, research, your publications agenda, assessment and promotion and employment, all right? It can also feed into your teaching awards. So for example, exactly, job promotion and self-promotion, Javed, yes. All right, so for example, many institutions, especially in the UK, they require that you submit an ePortfolio, right, as part of your application into their institutions. So it's something that is becoming more and more integrated in the employment process. All right. Because your teaching portfolio is really everything that they need to know about your teaching career, your teaching practice, your accomplishments, etc., as we saw in the previous slide. And then we have teaching awards. Any awards, first of all, any award that you may have won or acquired, or even grants, you can incorporate those into your teaching ePortfolio as well. Now, and in like manner, it's sort of a two-way process. In like manner, your ePortfolio can serve as an application towards a teaching award, yeah, or the acquisition of a teaching award. So for example, we have the UV Guardian Group Teaching Award ceremony, which is scheduled for later this year, and you'll see that closer to the end of this session. And there's another, Dr. Hill, I think there's another one, the AAU, I think it is. So that's another one that you may want to consider as well. And teaching awards have a lot of weight in them, because if you got an award for teaching, then it shows that you probably know what you're doing. All right. Dr. Jones said, yes, I had to submit a DDP when I did my studies. Yes, exactly. All right. So good. So the main components of a teaching portfolio, you definitely want to have your teaching philosophy, your teaching and learning responsibilities. So like the courses you do, the innovations that you incorporated. Let's say you created a new resource or an open educational resource, as we were promoting earlier this semester on OER. That's an innovation for teaching and learning. And then we have, yes, Atlantic. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Hill. Atlantic Universities. So that's another teaching award that you may consider. And Dr. Hill provided the link that you can take a look at that. And we can even provide the link. I don't know if Mr. Duku or Mr. Mohammed could provide the link to you would see the promotion for the UE Guardian Group Teaching Awards as well. So anyone who wants to apply to it, and these things you can apply repeatedly. So if you apply once and you didn't get it, you can apply in a subsequent year. All right. So don't worry about it. It's developmental. Evidence of effective teaching. Examples of that may include your students' course experience review, which Mr. Garcia Mr. Garcia, I don't know if you want to shed some light, and I'm putting him on the spot, but I'll give you a couple seconds to kind of gather your thoughts. It doesn't have to be long, just a little way, just explain how the data from the student, the course experience review can feed into or can provide evidence of effective teaching and or improvement and even integration of technology. Do you want to elaborate on that, please?
Well, I don't want to spoil too much for tomorrow, but nonetheless, if it fills one of the lenses from Brookfield's model, so you have the student lens, which you cannot ignore, although sometimes we would love to ignore it, but it just is impossible if we are true reflective practitioners to ignore that lens. So I always say, if you think of the student as your customer, and you own a store, if you have no customers, repeat customers, you're going to fail. So you want to have as many good reviews, which means you're going to pay attention to this customer's perspective. Yes. And as a point that Brookfield makes, that we keep paying attention, giving its due attention to the student feedback.
Yes. You're absolutely right. Dr. Hill, I think you were going to say something. I don't know. I thought I heard your voice.
No, you didn't hear my voice. No.
Oh, okay. All right. No, but you're absolutely right, Mark. This helps in terms of, well, first of all, there's a saying by Biggs that there's no teaching if learning hasn't taken place. So so effective teaching, in a sense, is predicated on learning. All right, which is why you need your students' feedback. All right. Paula said, hi, Paula. However, the customers don't really like, sorry, let me scroll up a bit. The customers don't really like to fill out those evaluations, no matter how much we ask them. Mr. Garcia, do you want to elaborate on that, or Dr. Hill, anyone? In terms of the new developments?
I wasn't paying attention. Sorry, I kind of digressed.
So Paula is saying that the customers don't really like to fill out those evaluation forms, no matter how much we ask them to.
Yeah, and that's because sometimes we they don't see the utility in it, and we don't share the response. But here at the USTA, I must put a big up for Mr. Mark Garcia.
That's why I'm just
We've been pushing the Student Digest, which is a short video, less than 2 minutes, so that we share that with the students, and so they can see that we've been taking note, we've been listening, and we've been listening carefully, and we share that with them so they can actually see you know, that it's not just in vain. But Paola is so correct that
Yes.
when customers don't see the meaning of this, then you're wasting their time, you know, and what is in it for them?
Yes.
That's often the question. Question is, what's in it for them? So I do think persons who are genuinely concerned about performance and you know, they often want to say, you know what, I really didn't like how customer was treated, or and that helps. That helps.
Yeah, you're definitely right. And it can be linked, and I don't know if Mr. Garcia has the digest, the link to it, he can definitely place it there. Mr. Mohammed, thanks for that, for placing the submission portal for the teaching award. So you can save that link, everyone, and because this will be directly linked to that. All right. So definitely want to have that in your list of links. All right. So what Dr. Hill just mentioned is sort of part, and Mr. Garcia, is connected to your teaching philosophy as well. So for example, if you stated in your teaching philosophy that you see yourself as a mentor to your students or of something of that sort, then one way of getting evidence of that, to see that in action and so on, is through the data that you get from your course experience reviews. Yeah. So whether students state, whether it's in the open-ended questions or in the rating questions or scales, they can make that clear. All right. So it's almost, that's one way that you can, your teaching philosophy can be, I don't want to say measured, but there's evidence that you're accomplishing what you highlighted in your teaching philosophy. Does that make sense? Yeah. So what is a teaching philosophy?
Yes.
A teaching philosophy really is, and someone mentioned introspection. I think Dr. Jones mentioned introspection. So it's really your view of how you see yourself as an educator. So for example, thank you so much for that, Mr. Garcia. So for example, let me ask somebody from the CTL first before I go to someone else. So Dr. Jones, how do you see yourself as an educator? You can use that question. How do you see yourself as an educator?
First and foremost, I see myself as a creative practitioner and one who is learning to be continually introspective / reflective. So I'll stop there for now because I could go on and on.
Yes. So that's exactly what you know, the brevity of it. Thank you so much for that. Let me ask someone else. Let's see. Jacqueline, how do you see yourself as an educator or an educational practitioner?
I see myself mostly as a facilitator, the guide on this side. Yeah.
I like where you're going there because, of course, you know, there's a theory to ground that in. So you can even use a learning theory or teaching theory to ground your teaching philosophy as well, which is encouraged. All right. Or it can be a combination of conceptual or theoretical frameworks as well. All right. And that's perfectly fine. Remember, there's no wrong way to do a teaching philosophy for the most part. It's your view of how you see yourself. All right. So keep that in mind. Let me ask two other persons.
Before you go on, Dr. Zephyrin, sometimes though, there is that sort of conundrum where we say something and throughout your ePortfolio, that is not evidenced. And I think that's one of the, I'm speaking out here because we review many of these portfolios and stuff. So someone can say that they are guide on the side, but the instructional approach is very much an instructionist.
Yes.
Direct instruction and so forth. So these are some of the things we want to look for in terms of congruency when we
Yeah.
say that this is our worldview, this is what we think, this is our practice, there should be that clear evidence in the things that you add and the evidence that you provide in your portfolio to substantiate that.
Think
So
of
I
it
think
like
that's important.
yes,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. And that's why I was making I was saying earlier that the CER, the data from there, is linked to, and I think what you were saying earlier, what's linked, it's linked to your teaching philosophy as well. So if it's just what you said, if you see yourself as a guide on the side or whatnot, then does that correlate or match what the data says in from the CER? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Or the
yeah.
footage, yeah? That your teaching footage, whatever that might be. I was also going to say something else and I just forgot, but that's okay. But oh yes, I remember now. So the teaching philosophy, you can see it from this angle as well. You could see your teaching philosophy as sort of a thesis statement, and everything after that
supports
the
yeah
evidence.
yeah the
All right.
evidence.
So see it like that, which is why we highlight the teaching philosophy as the first part of your ePortfolio in this particular workshop. So go ahead.
I know I'm plugging in and chipping in, but this is what we call a moment for the UWSTA has recently had persons actually applying to fellowship, advanced HE. And that is exactly what happens, is that persons are able to evidence their values. We say our teaching philosophy is actually talking about our values. As professionals, we have values.
Yes.
We are guided by values. What we do is guided by our worldview, our philosophy.
Yes.
Obviously, there are standards. And so those standards, it's important that we talk to those standards as well. And so I'm happy that you mentioned that, because it provided me the opportunity to chip in about when we write about our values, professional values. And I think the philosophy should be very intentional in making that bear.
Yes.
Not just clear, but bear.
Yeah.
All right. And I think it's very, very important.
And thank you so much for that, Dr. Hill. And your teaching philosophy doesn't have to be in itself multiple pages. It could be just a couple paragraphs. It doesn't have to be a very long-winded. And I'm using that word bear that Dr. Hill mentioned as from that angle as well. It doesn't have to be a lot of fluff, for lack of a better word, but it's just your view of yourself and how you teach and how you see yourself as an educator. All right. And of course, from that, how is that evidenced? All right. So some of you might be wondering, do I even have a teaching philosophy? Right. Now that you know what it is, consider, do you even have one? For those of you in Cuttle, you definitely have, we know that. But these are some questions that you would want to ask when you're formulating or writing your teaching philosophy. What do I believe about teaching? What do I believe about learning? So in other words, what is your understanding, or how do you view, in your opinion, how do students learn best? And I'm saying that with an asterisk, right? How do you think that learning is, for you, most effectively accomplished? Or how do you meet your learners' needs most effectively? Yeah. What do you believe about teaching? Do you think that teaching should be a chalk and talk approach, or should be something that should be fun or engaging, or that sort of thing? So it's your view. So if, for example, if I were to ask, let's look at Leticia, right? What do you believe about learning? What are your views on learning on the whole?
I think that learners should feel inspired, so that you should feel like you have enough resources at your disposal to be able to feel like it's a lifelong process, because it never ends.
Right. You're absolutely right. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. I thought you had something more to say, no?
Oh, no, that's it. That's it. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for that. You're absolutely right. And you see what you did there, you believe that learners, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That is the kind of response you're looking at for that particular question as part of your teaching philosophy. Added to that, you may want to consider, how is that demonstrated in the classroom? So for example, if I were to ask you the same question, Leticia, so now that you mentioned what you believe about learning and how learners how learners learn, how is that demonstrated? How do you make that possible in the classroom?
I think in terms of the classroom aspect, well, for me, it's really about guiding to be able to understand through the theory to the application. So for me, the classroom experience will involve not just learning what the actual topic is about, but actually seeing the how the real world applications apply and those demonstrations to really be able to understand how this is important and how it will be meaningful to them in the long run.
Yeah. And I think Camille is saying the same thing in the chat. Learning should be experiential. Teaching students to relate theories to real life experiences. You're absolutely correct. So let me ask something like this to someone in who teaches history and so on, or Caribbean civilization. Akil, how would you go about, let's say, okay, so you have your beliefs about learning and how learners learn. How is that demonstrated in the classroom for you?
Usually, particularly in relation to historical topics, I would sort of create scenarios and put students as the characters in those historical scenarios. Yeah, and that brings in the experience immediately. And then they are able to assess what they would have done and realize to a large extent what they would have done relates to what persons in the past would have also done given the circumstance.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, that's good. That's good. So you use that sort of role play approach and of course experiential as well. Very good, very good. And then of course the additional questions here. What are the things that you don't like as a teacher? So anybody, let's say, I could only imagine what we might get here. So Marsha, what are some of the things that you don't like as a teacher? Andrea said lies from students. Michelle said marking papers. All right, good. Someone thumbs up that as well. All right. It's so good, so good. Lack of resources.
Soliciting feedback as well from students. Sometimes it could be a task, particularly in the online environment.
Right. Wow, that's true. That's true. And someone said feeling ill-equipped. This a spectator attitude that many students have. Right. And you know, it's a good thing. When you highlight these, what you don't like, it helps if you, in your teaching philosophy as well, what are some of the things you do to mitigate against that or those things? So if it's lack of participation, as Shanice is saying, then how does how do you deal with that? How do you cope with it? How do you mitigate against that? Likewise for you, Akil. You know, what sorts, you know, something that you don't like, and how does your conceptualization of teaching and learning equip you to do that? Or how does your, what practices you put in place? Rachel said, watching good students perform badly because they have personal chat. Yes, that is. And so to that extent, you may want to incorporate some sort of mentorship or counseling services made available, you know, that sort of thing. So that could be one thing right there, what you might do to improve your practice. Sorry, go ahead, Leroy.
Yes, Justin, I would just want to, I would just want to put a plug in, and then Rachel is saying a lot of things there. And because we may be wedded in our own traditional thinking of trying to unpack a process, a teaching process, how we were taught. And this is where we may want to think reflectively about ensuring that we address the challenges or barriers sometimes. So this is where UDL comes in very nicely.
Yes.
But I hasten to make a plug-in,
Another one.
that many of our students, they suffer from the digital divide, but they also suffer from the not having. And so we encourage a lot by our planning. So we plan to teach, and then we say that we want to address those things that we know that students have challenges with resources, just as we have challenges with resources. And we do not make the effort to use open education resources, because what Rachel is linking to there, I'm seeing as well, is an access and perhaps accessibility issues as well. So personal issues can be one thing, but we also have those. And I want to perhaps digress a little bit and go back to the point you made, because one of the things we often see when we're evaluating portfolios, again, is that disconnect. Let me use an example. So if I am given a description that learning is, for me, the process of transmission of knowledge or information, that's my definition of learning. But my definition or characteristic of teaching says I'm the guide on the side. And so we see that disconnect. All right, we see that disconnect. And so it's important to have that sort of consistent approach in your philosophy. And that's what I meant earlier when I say the state of conundrum, because many persons will say one thing, but throughout their portfolio, there is and that's okay. I think sometimes when you acknowledge that and then you say, okay, I recognize that, hey, my philosophy started as this, but I think we ought to be looking at that from that standpoint as well.
Yeah,
I hope that makes sense. I was
Yes.
just trying to, I hope it makes sense.
Yes. No, you're absolutely right. I was just responding to what Camille and Rachel were saying as well in the chat. Dealing with the same issue, of course. In terms of students who encounter issues, personal issues or otherwise. But I think you hit the nail on the head, that the consistency or the alignment between what is in your teaching philosophy and the evidence to support it as well. All right. Patrice said high-strung students whose identity seem to be wrapped in their grades. Yes. So that sort of psychological part of it, because the psychology is part of learning as well, not just in terms of learning processes, but also the emotional development and so on. All right. So Akil said, presenting content in a relatable manner always helps to foster student engagement, sort of like the bridging and the Bob's model. Yes, you're absolutely right, Akil. And I think that speaks to what Dr. Hill just mentioned. All right. Thank you so much for that. So all of these questions here and what was discussed in the chat and what persons elaborated on, Dr. Hill, Akil, and several others, feed into your teaching philosophy, or should be at least acknowledged in your teaching philosophy. Your teaching philosophy should really answer the question, what are your views or conceptions on the things that inform your teaching, that inform your teaching practice? All right, those mainly would be, what about students? What are your views about students on learning? What are your views about teaching and teaching practice and effectiveness? What are your views in terms of reflection? Well, that is the documentation part of it. All right. So your teaching philosophy, think of it as a thesis, yes, but also a reflective statement, yeah, that encapsulates what you are about as an educator. Think of it as your conception. All right. So let's use the notepad and so on that we have, and I give you just a couple minutes for this. Don't worry, I like to use those weird numbers, well, not weird numbers, but you have 2.5 minutes almost. So in your notepad, I'm gonna give you a couple minutes to write what are your concepts or conceptualizations of the following: students and their learning, teaching, your process or your role, which we kind of discussed already, but I was leading up to this. 3, your teaching practice. And 4, how or when do you reflect? Is it after every session, after every month, after every module, after every semester, after every course? So take about 3 minutes. I'll round it off to about 3 minutes to just jot down in point form. So you don't have to take too long. You'd have to elaborate just in point form, maybe 1 or 2 points per section, and we can resume right after. Any questions so far? Okay.
No, okay, so far.
Okay, great, great. So I'm just gonna pause the recording as you take some about 2 minutes to finish this activity. All right. All right. So you should be wrapping up now. All right. So anybody wants to take a shot at it, or you don't have to, but if you would like to, you can just state it in point form. I think we could do that. We could do that at least for 1 or 2 persons. So let's see. Michelle. Michelle, are you able to elaborate on any of what you stated thus far? Okay, great. So I don't know if you could use a mic or if you want to type it. And let me know. All right, Camille, no problem at all. That's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. Camille, do you want to, while Michelle might be typing, do you want to use your, right. Okay, so Michelle, you type and Camille could speak in the meantime.
Okay, well, it was just point form because I was probably thinking a lot.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine.
The first one, I mean, I could have gone on, but just to be brief, ensuring that students understand the language that is used. And the reason why I highlighted language, because I think it's important during the learning process that the language speaks to the student. So I know at higher education, you must speak theory, you must speak of these different jargons. But it is important that when you are actually teaching and for them to absorb the information, that you break down the language in a way that everybody, because in a classroom and you have 20 students, everybody has a different way of learning. Some people are auditory, some people are visual. So language is important there.
Right. And I like that you mentioned that, and you might even make a justification, let's say for UDL, Universal Design for Learning, or differentiated instructions. Yeah. So that is something that you could fold into your teaching philosophy there. So that would, and look, it goes right into your teaching process or rule. But go ahead.
Right. So for the two, which I did, for the second one, the process, I didn't finish, but it reminded me of Albert Bandura's social learning theory, where incorporate things like observation. Students must be allowed, you have to teach them how to observe, but you also have to teach them things like retention, reproducing the information that is given to them, and things like motivation. And well, I was kind of writing when it
Yeah, absolutely right. Thank you so much for that, Camila. And even though you said you did 2 and you made it seem like it was so little, you actually stated a lot. All right. But you see how both of them are connected, right? The students' learning process, and then your role as the educator. All right. And then of course that would feed into your practice. And then when do you reflect? Michelle said in the chat, my students are visual and tactile learners for the most part. And therefore I use a lot of demonstrations and allow them to do things as well. I'm assuming is what you're saying. So good. Thank you so much for that, Michelle. And that's really, these are just guiding questions. And of course, even though we listed it in point form, you literally have the points now that you could flesh out into small paragraphs, if so much. All right. So it's just to get you started in this regard. So you've already started working on your teaching philosophy. And if, for those of you who already have a teaching philosophy, example, the Cuttle students, you can easily go back and tweak your teaching philosophy. Now, and that brings me to my other point. The teaching philosophy is not an absolute or one-stop kind of, your teaching philosophy will constantly be evolving, right? It evolves continuously, just as reflective practice is ongoing. All right. The next part of your teaching portfolio is your responsibilities and activities. And very quickly, that speaks to things such as the courses that you are a part of or teach or taught, your undergrad or postgraduate supervision, student supervision, research supervision, teaching committees you may be a part of, course development or modification. So if you you got the opportunity to develop a new course or to modify an existing course, that is perfectly fine. If you design material, teaching materials or learning materials, such as open educational resources or what have you, that's perfectly fine. All of that is part of your teaching and learning responsibilities and activities. Yeah. Innovations or initiatives. If you started a new support group. So for example, I know a couple of faculty members who establish certain support centers. So for example, we have the mathematics, the math help center, we have the writing center. I think that started many years ago. And so on. So these are things that you can, any initiative that you take within the vein or umbrella of teaching and learning, it counts under this as well. All right. Think of it like this, and this is another activity for your notepad. Think of Math Help Center. There you go, Leticia. I couldn't remember the exact name of it, but yes. Thank you so much for that. Think of one course, anyone that you have taught. So you're doing this on your notepad. Think of one course. You could put the name, the level, just a general approximate class size, the general student profile, the mode of delivery, maybe a line or two about what the course is about, and what did you do to improve the course. All right. So I'm gonna give you about two or 3 minutes to do that. And the reason I'm doing that is so when you get to your ePortfolio asynchronously, you have something to work with. All right. So think of a course name that you have, that you've been working on or that you taught, and just the general information on it. So the class size, the level, the general description of the students, if they are visual learners or they don't like group work, or what they're working students, mode of delivery, and what did you do to improve the course. And of course, you see where this is going now to tie to your teaching philosophy. All right. So keep that in mind. So you think of this course, what did you do to improve it in particular? And then as a reviewer of your ePortfolio now, whoever's reviewing it, let's say you want to apply for a teaching award, that person can see, okay, your teaching philosophy said X, and what you did to improve this course aligns with your teaching philosophy. Yeah? So I'll give you about 2 more minutes to finish this activity. And then we will move to the next component of your ePortfolio. Yes, same here, Juliet. I needed, the math center. Well, I don't know if over 40 years ago, but I needed it at one point. So I'm going to pause the recording a bit. All right. So, so whatever course you may have chosen, you don't have to go into detail right now, but let's say, Patricia or Rachel, either one, could you tell us, you could use your mic, what you did to improve whatever course you taught? You can do, you don't have to go through all the details in terms of the level and student profile now, but just give us an idea of what you did to improve the course that you listed there, please.
Okay. Good evening.
Hi.
I'm thinking of diet therapy. It's a course for nursing students, 60 plus students.
Right.
And so when I just started, I recognized that grading these students was quite a huge challenge for me. when it came to assignments and so on. So I started considering group work, and I realized that they enjoyed the group work because we had a lot of assignments that had simulations and so on.
Right.
And then videos, the students doing their own videos of actual scenarios that had to deal with dietherapy, and they were very creative, and I think that was very useful.
Nice. So there you have it. So you literally highlighted some of the improvements or innovations, teaching innovations that you incorporated into that course. And I'm sure Dr. Jones will like that because not too long ago she did a whole series on creativity in education. So I like that what you did there. And of course, I would imagine it's part and parcel or alluded to in your teaching philosophy. All right. So we get to the third phase now, evidence of effective teaching, including technology integration. Michelle said, use and production of educational materials. So, right, so speaking to the previous one, I looked at trends in emerging technologies such as AI in education and assistive technology. So that was very good, Michelle, very good, because of course that was not in some of those courses before in terms of AI and assistive technology and that sort of thing, even though they've been existing for years. Maybe in those particular courses or any particular course that you taught, didn't have that before. So thank you so much for that. And so evidence of effective teaching, including technology integration. Some of the questions we wanted to guide you in this as you reflect on this is, how do I present new information and opportunities for students to engage on a deeper level? So instead of just being passive recipients, how do you make them more involved? Akil mentioned the role play and experiential learning approaches that he incorporates in his history course or courses. Michelle, I think mentioned, I can't remember what you mentioned in your previous response in the chat. I think Camille mentioned experiential learning. Paula, how do you help students to reflect and refine? How do you help students to reflect and refine their learning?
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi,
So,
hi.
after, for example, if you're doing a presentation on a model and things like that, I would ask them within their group and individually to reflect on what they thought went well in their presentation, as well as what they could have done better if they found that they were able to articulate the information and get the information across as they would like. And I also asked the rest of the class, what would they have add some critical reflection, what they would have add, how they would have done the delivery of that model in a different way to allow some kind of reflective practice within the class as well, and to see how they will go on that.
Nice.
And I also use peer reflection. This is new. I haven't used it often, but I've used peer reflection where they work in groups and reflect on how the activity in their group work would have gone as well.
Nice, nice. And what you've done there is kind of merged what we see here as number 2 and number 4 in terms of feedback. Yeah. So that's good. And so, so you don't have to be necessarily compartmentalized into different things, but you may have a merge of the 2 or of the 4 or of the 3. So that's perfectly fine. Let me hear from maybe someone else. Andrea, do you consider, so let's say, for example, teaching effectiveness. Have students ever told you about the feedback you give them, or do you think that the feedback you give to your students meets them at the point of their need, or what are your thoughts on that, on the feedback you give?
Yes, the students would usually comment on the level of feedback and whether it's useful towards development of their progress. But as their lecturer, I encourage them to self-evaluate.
Right.
So they have to take some level of independence on reflecting on their own work and the quality of the work, and whether or not they're meeting the objectives that are stated within the course outline. and for the particular assignments linked back to the rubrics. So it's kind of like an alignment process that has to do with both self-feedback from the student perspective and then feedback on what I am saying to them, which oftentimes I use rubrics. So it's built in. It's built in to make it a little faster.
Right. Thank you so much for that. And the strengths and problems, or weak areas, if you want to call it that, or highlights of your course. Of course, we mentioned the students' course experience review, that survey. So that is something that you would want to go through the data from there and see what you did really well and what needs improvement. All right.
Okay.
And
sorry.
not just to you, but to everybody.
So
Go ahead.
In my case, at our campus, that has not taken place for some time now. But what we do as the School of Humanities and Education is we do midway throughout every semester. We have an instrument that we send out to get what we call early informal feedback. And that's something that would have been Dr. Hunt, the head's initiative.
Yes.
And we use that, just ask them 4 very simple questions. And from that, use it to adjust our teaching before the semester ends.
Right.
And for me personally, I ask my students at basically 3-week intervals.
Nice.
But that was linked to me doing action research. So
well,
it was deliberate and had a dual purpose.
Yes, and I think you hit the nail on the head that I was speaking earlier with, 2 for the price of 1, right? You get your action research agenda facilitated, as well as your reflective practice and teaching agenda. So thank you so much for that. And these are some of the other questions that you might want to ask as you interrogate, whether it's a self-interrogation or from the views of other persons. As Mr. Garcia mentioned earlier, you have different perspectives, angles, or lenses for feedback, whether it's from your students, whether it's from, well, of course, how you see yourself, your colleagues or peer feedback. And I think there's a 4th one I can't remember right now. I don't know if Dr. Hill could chime in there, but so yes, you have different, according to Brookfield's framework, of course. All right. Camille said, I like Andrea's alignment of student feedback lecture. Yes. And I like how they all integrated, how there's synergy amongst them. Dr. Hill said subtle. All right, good. So for your notepad, this is very short as well. Consider one teaching strategy or approach you incorporated, whether it's a collaborative approach and a technology tool you integrated, right? How did you use it? Why did you use it? And how it reflects, of course, it must be hinged on your teaching philosophy, right? If it's a teaching practice, a strategy, a technology tool, and the impact it had on students. So for example, I know Michelle, you mentioned in the chat that you use, you keep up with trends on AI and so on. So I'm assuming you incorporate AI technologies in your course. Why did you do that? And how did you incorporate AI in your course? And what was the impact? Yeah. So I'll give you just about 1.5 minutes to do that. And then we can move on to the rest of the session. All right. All right. Now, this is just so you know, when you hear that recording in progress, it serves as a the bell ring or something, I don't know, for the activities. So so it's just another way, I guess you could, if you're doing online teaching, that may help you as well. So just something you might, think of. So anyway, so for those of you who may have, and you don't have to complete this activity now, but it's just to guide you. So who wants to take a shot at it? Consider one teaching strategy you may have, or technology tool you may have incorporated into your class or course, and explain how it was used, why you used it, and the impact. I see we have, oh, Paula, go right ahead.
Yeah. Okay, so what what I started doing is that I kind of teach my classes the way I would like to be taught. My attention span is very, very short. So I have to keep moving and changing from activity to one activity to another so I can focus. So I noticed that when I talk for too long, my students get distracted very easily as well. So I started exploring different tools and different things. And one that I started testing was the I forgot the name, escape rooms. In during COVID, because during COVID it was tedious to get my students' attention for too long. So what I did is I create a scenario and I give them different challenges in order for them to escape the room, but all of those challenges are related to the content that I am teaching in my class. So I teach Spanish grammar, which for many people is one of the most boring things about learning foreign language, right? But what I try to do is I don't teach grammar isolated from real life use. So even though I teach them like a grammar structure, I will give them scenarios or situations and I will ask them to react, to talk about it, to simulate a conversation in which they use the grammar structure that I teach them in real conversations.
Right.
So the breakout rooms, I invented them so I explored them so they can do independent study. So they will revise the content, but at the same time, they are using it for something else. So most of the ones that I have created at the end, they have to do something. So they have to write a letter, or record something like a message or do something at the end. The first time that I did this, the students were so fascinated because they never expected that you could do something fun in a class that is traditionally not considered fun. So I tried it with my first year students and seeing that they were very motivated, and even they went back and did it more than once, even though they have completed it. They went back and repeated it because they said they enjoyed working with it.
Yes.
So I started doing it with other classes, and I always get the same reaction from them. So they enjoy it. It really catches their attention, and I managed to get them to practice what I teach them, without them having just to sit and read or memorize rules and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's more independent learning, I imagine, as well. And I think the escape rooms will allow you to save the data as well, the responses, not so?
Well, I was using Genially, so it doesn't track
Okay.
who does it. Yeah.
But I know if you use it in other platforms like Google Forms or Microsoft Forms or whatnot, you could definitely save the responses, and you can see for reflective purposes, of course. Let's say if students did it at the beginning of the semester and then at the end of the semester they did it again, and at least you can compare their performance in it. So it's just a suggestion. But I think, but I like that you mapped out exactly what you did, how you did it, why you did it, and what was the impact. And that was the whole point to highlight teaching effectiveness. And once you could document it, then definitely you could put screenshots or whatever you want to do to document it in your ePortfolio. All right. You could even do a focus group with the students who actually did that. Record the focus group and place it on your ePortfolio site as well. All right. So just something to consider. So I think you're on the right track there, Paula. And so just to show evidence of it, to support. Remember, we're saying that after you're teaching philosophy, you want to provide evidence to support what you're saying. So I like, and for everyone, by the way, the escape rooms, It's a nice game-based sort of approach to learning. Paula did it in our faculty cafe, and I think we also featured it in Tech Meet earlier this semester. So it's something that you may consider. So thank you so much for that, Paula. Definitely interesting. I think some other things you may want to include, everyone, when it comes to teaching effectiveness and integrating that into your ePortfolio. These are some things, data from students. So whether it's a CER report, or as I mentioned with Paula's situation, the like a focus group interview with some of the students, evidence of you teaching in a class or how you, whether it's online or face-to-face. Yes, Patrice said, Paula, nice. Feedback from colleagues, all right, all of these, and from students, all of these things feed into your effectiveness as a teacher, of course, teaching awards as well. All right, so we have some samples, because as we go into the next segment, you probably want to know what a teaching philosophy looks like. All right, just an idea of it. Now we have a couple from some past winners of the UE Guardian Group Teaching Award. And I'm just going to show one here. I'm not sure if you can see it. Let me know if you can. All right. So this is one. And
I
not,
have to go back.
Sorry?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize my mic was muted.
Oh,
I actually wanted to go back to the screen before when you listed the items that could be included.
Sure.
It went by a bit too fast for me. Sorry.
All right, no problem, no problem. So these are some of the things that you want to include. Some of your learning activities, and that includes maybe you have developed some a game like what Paula did, or you created an open educational resource as we were promoting earlier this semester. Of course, you see our report, student data, feedback from your colleagues. Yeah. Whether it's a written or video discourse of some sort, that is perfectly fine. Teaching awards or accolades, grants, etc., that feed into you, well, sort of strengthen your provide an integral part of your trajectory as an educator. Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem at all. And so I was showing here what an ePortfolio looks like. This is an award winner from a couple years ago. So it's not current, but it's just an idea of what to expect, or what it generally looks like. So you notice they have educational philosophy, teaching philosophy, and a couple other things, research, supervision, learning technology. So they design it in a particular way. Now I'm saying this, when I show you this, it's an ePortfolio doesn't have to be like a one size fits all and fit the same format for everything. It's your ePortfolio. It can take different forms and sequences and so on, but what's in main information is there, that is important. All right. So if we look at his teaching philosophy, all right, and we have it there, the instructor as a leader, all right, class design learning objectives, evidence-based mindset, and that sort of thing. All right. And if you scroll up, we can go into a couple different things: course designs, learning analysis, teaching and learning methods. Let's look at that, for example. All right. And this person has introduction, purpose, performance management process, sense of performance information, etc., micro lectures. And they have a video, a PowerTool, which they integrated from YouTube, their YouTube video here as well. All right. So we see experiential learning, flipped classroom. So these are all things that the lecturer, this particular educator, incorporated into their teaching ePortfolio. Media. All right. So I'm just showing you what it looks like. And so we have some images there, and maybe some articles. And so we see UE Guardian Premium Teaching Award and that sort of thing. So it lets you know that, okay, this person has gone through this particular experience, and it's their trajectory as an educator. Another person, this one is an old one. When I say old one, a portfolio, all right. And so this person has a bit here. So you have, this is a synopsis on the page here. They have a blog, they have a YouTube channel, teaching philosophy, and you can elaborate on these at their own pages. So they had a little blurb of what the teaching philosophy was all about, and then they elaborated in this thing. So look at this here. This person elaborated or starts from their time as a school teacher, right? Sorry, as a student, sorry, and then into a teacher or an educator. So they look at my Form 1 to 5 science teacher, my Form 6 biology teacher, and then my experience as a tertiary level, at the tertiary level was different. So I'm just reading some pieces of their thing. And then I first started teaching remedial biochemistry courses, etc., etc., etc. All right. So it shows their trajectory from student all the way to tertiary level educator. And notice this particular portfolio looks nothing like the previous one I just showed you, even though there's an age difference in terms of the ePortfolio itself. All right. So we have snippets from the YouTube channel. All right. So all of this is part of teaching effectiveness because it's innovations, it's technology integration, teaching responsibilities, etc. All right. And so, and there are several other portfolio samples that I could show, but for the sake of time, you kind of get the gist of it, I think. Those are the things that you want to include as you build your ePortfolio site. All right. And these are go ahead.
I have one question for the group before I run away. Because persons might be tempted to think of an ePortfolio as this metaphor. But if you were to think of one metaphor that is not an ePortfolio, what would that be? Anybody? I don't know. I'm really forcing you to think hard a little bit. I could have said, okay, what would it look like as from a metaphor? But anybody? LinkedIn page? Leticia, I like that. Yes, you're certainly correct. So it is not an online CV. Excellent, Paola. All right, so your ePortfolio is not as online CV. And I think that's one of the major things we often see persons when they're submitting the ePortfolio. Major gap is that they treat it like a CV. It's not an online CV. It's really that reflective turn that you need to give. And some of the time we saw, but around the artifacts or the samples that you put, you should be reflective. Why is this here? And tell me why this is here. What you're sharing this artifact in your ePortfolio. What is this? So what of this? What is the significance of this here? I mean, so what? I think that's important to really leave with, because a lot of persons call low, and I'm saying this because we have the Guardian. You may be interested in applying for the Guardian Award or the AAU or any others. It's important for you to not see your ePortfolio as a CV. All right. Thank you, Paola and Leticia.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Hill. I'm seeing some persons asking to go back to a couple of slides just before. Is it this one? I'm assuming this one. So there are different platforms that you could use or you may consider in building your ePortfolio. Mr. Mohammed will go through, just maybe identify some of them. And yeah, so I'm going to hand you over to Mr. Mohammed now, and he will take it from here. Mr. Mohammed?
Sorry, Justin, just 1 second. You had a slide like with a list of things that you should include in your portfolio. This one. Just 1 second, I'll take a screenshot.
Sure, no problem. All right. And Patricia, yes, you can match this to to the couple assignment as well. All right. But this is just general things. And I think the one you got in your couple assignment might be a little more specific or detailed. Because after all, it's a reflective practice course. So we want to keep that in mind. So Paula, is that okay? Yeah. So I'm going to hand over to Mr. Mohammed now. And Mr. Mohammed, you could take it away. And Mr. Mohammed is the e-learning support specialist, as you know. So he's gonna, you could see from the start of the video.
Okay, so you're seeing my presentation. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So right, so we don't have much time. I most likely will not be able to show you how to build, but what I will do right now is try to give you some tips, right? And possibly we have a resource already on our YouTube channel, which went through a lot of the know-how and nice to know information when building your ePortfolio using Google Sites, right? So let's get to it. And let's look at making the portfolio easy to build. All right. Who here should give me a thumbs up? Respond by giving a thumbs up. Respond with a thumbs up. Thumbs up means yes. Thumbs down means no. Who here thinks that the designing or the building of the ePortfolio is difficult? Okay. Okay, so it's not difficult. Akil said it's not difficult. All right, that's good. That's good. I agree. I don't think it's difficult. I think people might see it difficult because the requirements it doesn't outright have right, some challenges dependent. Right. So some of the requirements of the portfolio can seem very challenging itself. Right. Now let's look at breaking it down into simple terms. Somebody spoke about when they're teaching, they want to break things down into simple terms. So we are going to try and do that. Let's look at the real world application. Let's look at the real world application. And for somebody who asks about making their ePortfolio exciting, let's look at making it exciting. All right, so I'll try my best. Getting started with ePortfolios. So the first thing you want to do, why did you pop up? All right, so the first thing you want to do is think about the structure of your ePortfolio. All right, and in structuring your ePortfolio, you want to consider the purpose. All right, think of why you're creating it. Is it for accreditation purposes? Is it for professional development purposes? Or is it just a personal reflection? Is it to satisfy the requirements of a course, an assignment? Is it for a teaching award? You need to think about that, because when you do that now, you get a good idea as to who is going to be reading your portfolio or reviewing it, and you would know exactly what content to put in your ePortfolio. So, for example, if your ePortfolio is to, let's say, it's intended for accreditation purposes, you might want to focus on showcasing evidence that aligns with the specific accreditation criteria. If it's for professional development, you might want to emphasize things like your development, your growth, learning, continuous improvement. And in doing so, you want to include artifacts that would demonstrate. So Dr. Hill spoke about evidence right? So you want to include those artifacts that will demonstrate your teaching practices, probably some of the innovative approaches, and of course, it's a reflective theme. You want to look at reflective insights. All right. So these are some of the things you want to think about when defining your purpose. Now, as part of structuring your portfolio, look at whether or not there's a guiding framework. All right. If your portfolio is guided by, let's say, I use the example of accreditation before, I'll stick with it. Let's say it's guided by an accreditation requirement, or even for the cutlass here, program requirement, or even teaching awards, then simply follow the provided framework. Just like you would tell your students, follow the rubric, look at the rubric. This is how I'm going to be marking you. This is what I'm going to be looking for. You use the framework. In some cases, they might even provide a rubric, and you use that to build or structure your ePortfolio. So when deciding on the framework itself, you want to include things like your teaching philosophy statement. You have that down packed already. Dr. Zephyrin spoke about it. He did talk about elements of teaching performance and effectiveness. You want to include things like planning and preparation. Yeah. You want to include even the assessment and examination of students' learning. So you want to put those evidence or artifacts inside of your portfolio. And then you want to still include professional development. You want to show evidence of your past, present, and possibly future professional development initiatives. And when it comes to personal use now, let's say you are developing your ePortfolio for personal use. You have a little more flexibility, all right, with this. So you're going to include things like teacher responsibilities, innovative teaching and learning, and innovative assessments, feedback, and not just feedback from your students, but feedback from your peers, reflections and relevant readings, some of your research interests. So a portfolio like this might be something you design or develop to support your CV. Yeah. Any questions? See what the chat's saying.
Excuse Javed, can you go back to the previous one because my Zoom stick? You don't have to explain everything. I heard most of it, but the guiding principles, it just my Zoom disconnected.
Of course. All right. So we're looking at personal use.
No, the guiding
Guided
framework.
feedbacks, guided framework, sorry. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So you got that screenshot?
Yes.
Nice. And structuring your ePortfolio here now, we want to look at the selection of artifacts. Very, very important. Dr. Hill, I think, tried his best to make that point clear. This is where you need to be selective. We have reviewed a lot of ePortfolios, and one thing that I think we can all agree on is that persons choose quantity over quality, but I'm here to tell you all to choose quality over quantity. With that said, you want to be selective with you're very selective with your evidence and artifacts that you're going to include in your ePortfolio. So while you're being selective, make sure that whatever you select or choose provides a comprehensive view of what you're trying to communicate to the person who is looking, reading, and learning about you, right? So again, rather than overwhelming your website or your ePortfolio with a lot of text, a lot of reflections, or items, images, focus on quality. choose artifacts that really and truly represent you, really and represent your teaching journey and the impact you have on your teacher, your students and your colleagues, your teaching peers. Yeah. So think about that. So you're going to select evidence that, of course, directly relates to teaching activities for your teaching portfolio. So if it's your teaching portfolio, some of the things you want to include would be lesson plans, lesson planning. So I know this might be a little ticklish thing. Not everybody would develop lesson plans, but you should have one or two in your archive somewhere. And if that's the case, you want to showcase well-designed. You're not going to put all, you're going to put the few well-designed lesson plans that would actually demonstrate or highlight certain aspects of your teaching philosophy. So let's say in your teaching philosophy, you speak a lot about being a guide on the side, or you talk about some kind of pedagogy or pedagogical approach or andragogical approach to teaching, then pull that lesson plan that would allow you to show evidence of that, right? You want to, of course, show in your lesson plan that you are an expert at developing learning outcomes or objectives, whichever one you prefer, and even showing the person reviewing that you are competent as well, not only in developing a lesson plan or using good instructional strategies, but you are able to now complete that triangle with the appropriate assessment, linking everything together. So those are some of the things that you want to look at when selecting your artifacts. So again, you could highlight student work, some of your teaching innovations, feedback and evaluation. So you're going to be sending a request to Mark, Mr. Garcia, asking him for guidance on how to access your evaluations. And you want to include that as well. And you don't want to just take the entire, if it's a PDF download, you don't want to put that entire thing. You can take snippets out of it, a simple screenshot. You can recreate using Canva and saving it as a PNG, JPEG, and embedding it on your site. All right, so let's go. Any questions? Feel free to turn your mic on and stop me. All right.
Hi, David.
Yes.
Sorry, question. I also need to go back a couple of slides. I think I missed. So you mentioned 3 different kinds of portfolio, one for accreditation, one for professional development, personal development.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I have the one for the accreditation,
Mm-hmm.
which almost a guiding framework. I don't think I got the notes for professional development and personal development. Possible to see those? Oh, personal. Okay, yeah, I didn't see this. So
Yeah.
this is personal.
Yeah. No, this is not set in stone, right?
Yeah.
You know, but if it's for personal use, and I give the example of your CV to support your CV, of course, you're going to tailor your CV. If you're applying for a specific job, you're going to tailor your CV based on the job you're applying for. And then you will also tailor your portfolio to capture those evidence and best practice, right? For this personal use. Yeah.
Okay, and then professional. Sorry, development.
Right.
Oh, that selection of artifacts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. I wasn't clear what headings, as the headings were different. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So some design tips. I know this is very important. At the end of the day, we are not web developers, graphic designers, and so on. Some of us are good at it, some of us not so good at it. And that's the reality. But what's key here is that you consider these tips. All right. And for that reason, I want for you all to turn your attention to these tips that we have in front of you here, for the purpose of basically creating an effectively and visually appealing e-portfolio, right? You ever hear they say people eat with their eyes too? So sometimes things looking nice. And because it's looking nice, you want a bite of that. I think a visually appealing e-portfolio will invite persons to read and keep them engaged and so on and so forth. So with that said, you need to plan. And as part of the planning, create a sketch or a rough draft. So you want to definitely sketch a rough draft, draft out your e-portfolio, the layout I'm speaking about here, before actually going into the designing part of it. All right, before going to the website, going to a platform and designing, sketch it out. Pencil and paper works really well for this. And while you plan, you could look at others. You could look online and see how some persons design their site, and you document your style. You draft out your style. So you're gonna, as part of the rough draft, and we'll talk a little more about the rough draft in a little bit, right? But consider the overall structure. Consider the overall structure. So think about the sections, how the content will flow, how persons will interact with your site, because these things are very important. At the end of the day, we're not just creating a portfolio for the sake of documenting your work or your journey as a professional. You want people to read it, you want persons to access it. So think about those things. Storyboarding, you can do, that's another technique you can use. So a storyboard will help you create like a rough visual representing each page or section of your site. And this will help you organize your content logically, right? The other thing is here, I think this is very, very important. I've seen persons use a lot of different font styles, font color, and that could be too much. So here I'm here to tell you, stick to a maximum of no more than 3 fonts. How did I come up with this? Well, I've looked at graphic designing and some of the advice given from professionals is that don't use more than 3 fonts. Don't use font style or font colors. Keep it simple, right? So why you want to do this is because you want to create a consistent, cohesive look. Yes, you can use different fonts for your headings, subheadings, and the body or paragraph, but be sure to keep it simple and stick within this advice here, no more than 3 fonts. Why we're doing this as well is to ensure readability and to show the reader, it's like it could act as a signpost. It can show the hierarchy of the information being presented, the hierarchy of the page, etc. Right. So where am I now? See, like the best colors. Colors. Colors could be your best friend on here, right? So choose a digitally appealing color palette. I'm going to emphasize this point here now. Choose a color palette that works really well, that works excellent for viewing on various devices. And we know these devices: your desktop, your laptop, your tablet, or your phone. Not because something is looking really good and showing clear and crisp on your device means that it will show the same way on somebody else's device. So you want to keep switching between the different views when designing, when you're developing. Most of those websites allow you to switch between a phone, a mobile phone, tablet, and a desktop view. So you want to keep doing that to make sure everything is fitting properly and the color is balanced. So you can even use your cell phone while developing and share the link to yourself and keep testing. White space is your best friend. All right, so there's another thing that persons tend to do is to fill the entire page with information. I know some persons think that white space is a bad thing. You know, we think that because it's blank, we need to put something there. White space is actually your best friend. So what you want to do is leave enough space around elements, key elements, because you put that element there for a reason. You put that element there because you want people to read it. You want them to focus on it. It could be text, it could be an image, it could be a video. So this would improve readability, and it will give your design some breathing space, right? And when you do that, you're actually avoiding clutter as much as possible. So when you're doing this, don't overcrowd your ePortfolio with too much content. Find ways to chunk your content into bite sizes, as we say, and let each element stand out. It's an intentional element. You select that element, you design that element for a purpose. It's not there because you think it looks pretty, all right? Design with mobile in mind. I think I spoke about that a little bit, but this point really and truly here is to talk about designing with mobile in mind, because when you share your link, some persons might send a link for review, right? Friends, colleagues, whatever. Java, check out this website. Most times I'm going to do it on my own time. And on my own time, sometimes I might be chilling in front of the TV. I'm not going to look for my laptop or go move and sit somewhere else where there's a desktop. I'll pull out my phone. So when you're designing, you want to make sure your design is responsive. So again, you're going to switch between those different devices, all right? Yeah, you want to switch between those different devices to ensure that the fonts and images and everything fits in on the page as it should, and making sure that persons can actually see the navigation button, etc. This last point here, very, very important. The easier the navigation, the better. This is something, again, that you want to pay some attention to. So when it comes to navigation, guys, the easier the navigation, the better. Simplicity is the key. We have a thing here in the office, KIS, simplicity is key, or sorry, KIS, keep it simple. Sorry. Mark probably jumping off his seat there trying to knock me out here. But you want to keep it simple. You want to use straightforward menu navigation titles. Avoid complex drop downs or confusing links. The last thing you want is for the person who's viewing your site to feel confused. They don't know where they're going. They were looking at a page on your teaching strategies, and for some reason they click a button thinking it's going to another strategy, but it actually went to another page. It's simple. Arrange your sections logically. So you're gonna have your regular about me, teaching philosophy, evidence, reflections. Find a way. Talk to AI. Call on AI for assistance to come up with unique naming conventions for the naming of your tabs, right? Your navigational tabs or your menus, right? Because sometimes these things take a lot of time, right? So we wanna get the help where we can. We wanna take the help when we can get it, right? So designing tips again, and this is again with the planning, where I spoke about sketching a rough draft. Let me just pay some attention to the chat. Oh, can I? Okay, an appropriate color palette, please. So somebody wants an example now. So I am not sure if you all can remember that color wheel that we did in school, secondary school, I believe, between Form 1 and Form 3. We did a color wheel, and color theory is, it can be complex. So I can't really give you an example of an appropriate color palette because it all depends on you. What you want to, the story you want to tell, and the feelings you want persons to feel when they look at and read your site. So refer to the color theory if choosing a color palette. You can go online and there's so much information there. Different colors elicit different emotions and so on and so forth. So it all depends on you and what you are trying to achieve, right? But note this, make sure that there's high contrast between text and background. And that's it. For me, that's what I try to do. For example, in this PowerPoint, this presentation here, I try to keep that high contrast so you can see jumping out here, gather content, develop wireframes. It's black text on top of or in front of white background. Yeah. So the color theories have different theories behind it. It's all up to you. I'm sorry, I'm unable to give you an appropriate color palette. So black and white is a very modern, minimalistic color palette choice. I choose that a lot. My colleagues here get tired of it, but for me, I think it works. Right? Let's see. Kiss, keep it simple.
Just to chime.
Thanks, man. Thanks, Dr. Zephyr. Yeah.
That's what was told to me during my doctoral studies and so on. But in terms of the color palette, I think the principle really is once you go with a dark background with lighter color font or vice versa. Like what we have here, notice that Javid has black text on a white background. And then when you look higher up in the same slide, he has a lighter color text and a darker background. So whatever the palette you use, because it must be readable. So make sure that you use, it can be both fonts, color and background are dark or bright. So they have to be opposing colors, basically.
Yeah. So when I'm designing now, if I'm designing a website, I will ask I'll ask the person for their logo. Right? Most times when designing a logo, you also have a color scheme that you work with. So you want that to transcend throughout the website. You want to stick with it. But I don't want to get too deep into this. Remember, I'm trying to keep it simple. And Dr. Zephyr, he mentioned it there. He said it. To me, that's as simple as it goes when it comes to selecting your colors, right? So let's get back to creating a wireframe, which basically is sketching a rough draft. So give me a thumbs up here if you're familiar with the ADDIE model, ADDIE, or the engineering design model for those who are in engineering. Anybody giving thumbs up, Dr. Zephyr?
No, I'm not seeing. Let me just scroll up and see. No.
So you can try it again. If you're familiar with the ADDIE model or the engineering design model, let me get a thumbs up. If not, no need to put a thumbs up. Seen something in the chat. Right. Thank you, Dr. Addison. Okay, so, well, let me answer the next question. And you can turn your mic on. Why do you think it's important to use a model for designing or working on a project? Why do you think it's necessary, or what is the benefit then of using a strategy, a model, a guided framework for designing? Turn your mic on, put it in the chat, structure. So you can have structure. And basically, I like that, keeping it simple, structure. So you can have some structure, a method to the madness, easy to follow, connecting variables. All right, so good. So no need for me to provide a justification. All right, so this model here, you will not find it online. I came up with it. What I try to do is use something called the ADDIE model, which is an instructional designing model, to help simplify the process for creating a rough draft. And we spoke about some of these things already. So the first step here is defining your purpose. And here you need to understand the goal of your portfolio. I have to reiterate this. Is it for a job? Is it for a job application? Is it to showcase work? Because we're not all the time we create an ePortfolio for promotion of our job application. We just probably want to showcase some of our works. We want to big up ourselves out there and have our name out there. Is it for academic purposes? You decide. The purpose will guide the process. Then you wanna, so the next step would be gathering your content. So you want to collect all the materials. So after you define the purpose, collect all the materials, all the artifacts you want to include. And this will include things like your resume, work samples, contact information, very important, and the list could go on. When you've done that now, you want to sketch a layout. Use a pencil, paper, create a basic sketch, outline where each piece of content will go. Because I'll tell you this, when you go on the platform to design, you can get confused. You'll be tempted to use what is already popping up there, and you might just go with it. But in the end, it might be too confusing, too wordy, too much, not effective, not aligned to the purpose. So create a basic outline and consider the user journey. Consider how a person's going to interact with your site. When you've done that now, you want to develop wireframes. So this is where you're actually going to the site now, right? And start with simple wireframes or simple templates that will focus on placement of placements rather than details itself, rather than too much details. We just want to see how everything is fitting. So we have a space for an image, and then you have some text. You can have a carousel. You put that in your low fidelity wireframe. And then the last step would be to refine and test. So this is not putting too much information right now on the site. I know it sounds like it's a lot, but it's going to help you. So in the refining and testing now, you're just gonna get feedback from your colleagues, your peers, talk to the husband, the wife, ask them to review this, how you think this layout is, and ask them for feedback. Ask them if it's too many clicks to get to this, or should the menu be here. Ask them and they will give you good feedback. All right. And based on the feedback, you're going to refine and test. All right. So I know we're coming close to the time here. So let me move on to choosing a platform. Now, listen, so many considerations. I've only put 10 here. Right. And this is still a lot. But these are some of the things you want to consider. Some of the ones that I would say of high priority is that first one, their features. All right, look at the type of features with the platform. Can the platform support various type of media, video, images, embeds, etc.? Does it allow for things like collaboration, where somebody could come and collaborate with you in designing? All of those things you want to look at. Accessibility. Most sites can be accessed via different devices, but you still want to make sure that persons could view that site on different devices. Scalability in terms of like memory capacity. So as you grow and you continuously build on your portfolio, the site is allowing you to do that. Do you see this one here? Support and resources. When you're building your site, you want to make sure that you can access resources or support online 12 o'clock in the night. All right, so see, this is a good indication as to whether or not this is a good site to use, right? If there's lacking support or resources online, I might want to step back a little bit and look for something that, you know, is out there and a lot of information and I could learn as I build. All right, so any questions here on this page? Because we're running out of time. We're out of time already. So any questions here? Turn your mic on. Feel free to turn your mic on. No questions? All right, so I'll wrap it up with this now. We want to make this thing easy, guys. We want to make it easy. All right, and in doing that, we want to select some sites that are user-friendly for back-end user, front-end user, the designer and the front-end user, right? So these are some sites. Take a screenshot. There's so many more. You will notice that I did not include Google Sites. Google Sites is very popular. A lot of you already using it, so I didn't include it, but that's a good platform as well. Who says you can't use Canva? You can use Canva. All right, when you look at and I looked at AI in particular, all right? Sites that will help you quickly develop, design. Go ahead, Jacqueline.
Oh, yeah. Hi, Javid. I just
Hi.
wanted to, before you wrap up, I just wanted assistance in how do I share my ePortfolio. I have completed it, but I am not sure how to share it on the learning platform.
Okay. So what platform are you using?
I'm talking about our Cattle learning platform.
Right, so that will be in my
Yeah.
learning, but what platform you use to
Oh, so
design your
sorry, Google Sites. Sorry,
Oh,
Google Sites.
all right, no problem. We could talk about that after. It will be just stay on. If you can't, stay on and I will explain.
Okay, thanks. Will do.
All right. So you can take a screenshot. These are some of the AI powered site builders. So you can see here the first one allows you to create professional eye-catching in minutes. All right. Freelancers use it, professionals use it. There's the other one. It convert prompts. So for all those prompt engineers who already versed in using ChatGPT, Copilot, etc., you can use those prompts in a different builder to help you customize your site because it will help generate templates for you. There's Wix. I use Wix. I use Wix just to show you what Wix look like. Wix. Are you seeing my screen still?
Yes.
Okay. So this is Wix. All right. So this is a mock-up. This is a little mock-up. This is not. All right. Let me just right. This is not the actual thing, but I just want to have some elements to show you what Wix could do for you. All right. This is Wix. You have your menu. You can choose from countless templates. All right. It's very nice. I put this background with this text to show you that look how difficult it is to actually read this text over this color background and vice versa. All right, so you want to stay away from that. Now, if you look here now, you're seeing key competencies in black and the background is a light color. This color here now is, I find too hard on my, it's too hard. It's not blending well with the green background. It's going all the way across the page. Just showing you some of the things you want to refrain from as well. But this is something you can include in your About Me section anyways, a fun fact about yourself. It could be related to teaching and learning. I just put that there. You could display your information in various ways. So for this section here, it's about training and certifications. So you can do that, but this is not designed. Once you need to know that this is not designed in Wix. So these are images and this is a carousel. And what is happening here is that, but what happened here is that I created this in Canva, the graphics, and I just uploaded it in Wix. All right, so you can use an AI as well, an AI platform to help you design your graphic elements. Right? Then there's a contact form. Skills now. So soft skills. So I did the same thing for this carousel. All right. Some of my soft skills, or whoever this guy is, soft skills, rather than putting all this text, I am excellent in communication, blah 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 blah. Why not graphically represent it? So I use Canva again here, created these images and upload it in Wix. All right, so these are just giving you some ideas. Use Canva for this part as well. And look at the contrast between background and text for some of these things. I don't like it. Don't like it. Technical skills. This is Canva here again. And you want to keep your page consistent as well. So on the home page, I have at the bottom contact information. You can choose to include the other information as well, but I just want to give you the example of consistency in the look and feel, so persons will know, okay, when they reach here, they reach the end. Work samples now. So you might have some lesson plans. So this site moving slow because it's a test thing I'm doing here. All right, so this is a course that was developed. I say something about it. I put a little graphic. There's a button to click on. If you click on it, it should take you to another site. All right, so you have, all right, so remember this is just a test, so I didn't really want to. So you can have the same thing, more links to, this could be innovative resources, you name it, whatever you want, videos, etc. So this is Wix. You can use Google Sites as well. Sorry. Where is it? Yeah. Can use Google Sites as well to do the same things. May not be as impressive as Wix, but the Google platform is a really good one to use if you're familiar with Google already. So again, you have the about me, you can put an image. This is a carousel here. It's in edit mode. So you would not see the actual carousel move, but if I switch to preview, it should move. It's moving, right? I could click on it too if I find it moving too slow, right? You can have work experience, create all these images in Canva and bring it across. And this is what I spoke about, switching from different devices. Phone. I don't like how this is looking. Look at how much text this is. I don't know about you, but for me, I don't like that. This is looking too wordy here for on a phone view. This is looking chunky. Look how huge these buttons are looking. So I need to do some work, right? Good. Tablet view, laptop view, and then close. Right, and let me get back to this presentation. So that was a quick run through of Wix and what you can do with Wix and possibly what you can do with Google Sites. The last thing I want to let you know is that you can outsource. You do all your work, you do all the purpose, the documentation for the purpose, your acquisition or sourcing of artifacts, and outsource, because we are not all website developers. So these are some platforms you can go to. All right. Design Hill, it's a disclaimer, it's not Dr. Hill, but Design Hill is one there as well. And I would now pass it over to you, Dr. Zephyrin. If you have questions, feel free to turn your mic on. I'm just paying attention to the chat.
All right, not a problem at all. Just one sec. All right, thank you so much for that, Mr. Mohammed. And hopefully, colleagues, I hope you got a good you got some good insights on creating a web your ePortfolio in terms of the web content and even the web design of it. All right. Please be sure to complete the evaluation form. And while you do that, just about 1 minute to explain the UE Guardian Group Teaching Award for many of you who may be interested in it. The award ceremony is carded for later this year, all right, in September. And to be qualified for a teaching award or to be nominated for a teaching award, all you have to do is submit your ePortfolio by this date we see here, all right, for it to be considered. And it will go through our review process, not just internal to the CTL, but external reviewers. We have a team of persons, well, I can't tell you where they're from, but but no, from different institutions and so on, who are really good at these things as well in terms of reviewing and helping us sift through, yeah, the nominations and the winners and so on. So if you need any assistance in that, or you may even consider the AAU award as well, that is something you may also consider, or both. You might do UE Guardian this year and aim for AAU next year. All right. Just so you know, some of the things that we look in that particular, in the UE Guardian Group Teaching Award, we look, same thing as we said, teaching effectiveness, personal and professional development. So of course, any sort of training you've done, workshops, courses, programs, etc. As well as how you develop the distinctive UE graduate. That's a criterion that they look for as well. Organization and presentation, which Mr. Mohammed went through as well, and the teaching philosophy, which we explored. Yeah. So I don't know if you have any additional questions. All right. But we definitely thank you for not just your attendance, but your participation. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow, which will be which will bring our teaching and learning week to a close for this year. And for that particular session, it's called Action Research Inquiry-Based Teaching. So remember during this session, we spoke a lot about how reflective practice can feed not just into peer observation and ePortfolio, but also your inquiry action research or research agenda. All right, so we're finished, Akil. So it's just so you know, as always, be very creative with your ePortfolio. There's no wrong way to do it. All right, of course, you have the guidance. You can contact any of us for if you have any questions or guidance that might be needed. And yes,
I think Jacqueline had a question earlier. Jacqueline, if you're still here.
Yes, I am. You told me to hold on. It's
Right.
about directing me how to upload on the platform, the
Right.
learning platform.
Right. Okay. So yeah. So hold on. At the end, I will show you.
Okay.
If others want to stay on just to see it, that's fine.
Okay.
Is that an ePortfolio platform or the learning or my learning?
My learning platform, how to share the ePortfolio on the My Learning platform.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, we can definitely do that after well, I guess we kind of wrap up now.
And wait, before you go, another person had a question regarding hyperlinks, right? So and they ask how to anchor it or how to embed hyperlinks on the page itself. So that is pretty much straightforward as well. In most of the editors, once you insert text or text box, different sites will have different names, but you know what I mean. Let me share my screen quickly.
Show them?
Yeah.
So we're just gonna do this before we wrap up, as some persons are asking. All right.
Right. So this is where am I again? All right. This is Google Sites. This is Google Sites, and I want to, let's say, in this section here of my page, I want to add text. All right. So first, I need to click on the section that I want to insert the text. go across to text box, insert text box, and a text box will appear in the relevant section. If it's in the wrong section, I can just drag and drop it to where I want, right? So you have different sections you can drag and drop. But I want to put text, a hyperlink here. Open me, or read more, something like that. All I need to do now is highlight the text and select this universal icon here for inserting a hyperlink. Once I click on this option, I can put the link here. So this could be right. Let's preview. Right, click, and it should take me to Prezi. Okay, I hope this addresses the question.
Hi, Robert. So, sorry, I asked a question, right? So why I was asking, like, when we look at the content shared on any of the socials from the Kotel lecturers, right? Sometimes you would be on my e-learning and a box will appear on that page itself as opposed to going to a new tab. So I want to use the hyperlinks, but I feel as though it may become confusing if every time they click on the hyperlink, they go to a new tab.
Right. So open a new tab or open a page.
Yeah.
You most likely will not get that feature
with Google Sites.
with Google Sites. If you're into coding, you can do coding, website HTML coding. That may allow you to do that, but
okay.
Yeah. Maybe there's a way, but I don't know that way.
I'm trying to understand the question. Is it that you're saying that you want the page to open up in a new window or the same window?
No, I don't want it to open in a new window. I want it to open on that same page where the information appears. So if I click here, I want it to pop up right there as opposed to go into a new window or tab.
Right, you can do two things. One, you can if it's is it a video or just a hyperlink or a page or
so like for instance, like for the teaching experience, right? I have a table where I outline all of my years teaching at the university, number of students, etc. Right? So I want to insert something like that, but that will come up in a new window. And if I want to include like evidence of effective teaching, then again, if I use that hyperlink to get away from all of that text, right? And having things look cluttered, it goes into a new tab or new window. And that to me, I feel as though that might confuse the reader. So I just wanted everything to appear in that one space, like how it usually does.
in Moodle.
Yeah.
But there are different things. It depends on, well, okay. So you could either have it where you place a link and let's say the link to one particular site or resource page or whatever it might be. And there's usually an option just below, it's in the upper side of the settings page in that resource that you add, where you could click tick open a new window or the same window. There's definitely a menu there. So it usually is, I think, right. Sometimes you could miss it. It's usually right under an HTML field, but it's usually in the first 5 parts of the menu when you go into the settings of that. So once you add a resource, or if you just drag, well, in this case, drag and drop, or whatever you want to do, you just go into the settings of it, edit it, or the editing settings, and then look for that menu. I think it's either view or something of that sort. I can't remember the exact name of it, but you have the option to make it as to open it as a new window or tab, or keep it in the same window. Me personally, I prefer to keep things in separate windows, just for me, because I don't like students going in multiple pages. I'm sorry, losing, because some students, if it's a student-based thing, students prefer to open in a new tab or new window as opposed to losing the page that they're on. So if they have to go back, they don't have to, lose that page to go back and, verify what they were reading before. But in your case, you can do that. Another option, if it's a video, you can, or if it's some sort of media, you can embed it into your course page as well. All right. So you can do that either using, I think, either Label, or you can even create a web page in My Learning. So just once you go to that web page, it stays right there. It doesn't have to go all over the place. So there are different ways you could do it. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
No problem at all. And if you need like for us to walk you through that process, you could definitely contact us for a clinic.
I will definitely do because
Yeah,
I've
we
been
could
watching
definitely show
YouTube
you.
videos and I can't figure it out at all. So I started to get frustrated.
Yeah, no problem at all. All right.
All right, thanks.
All right. So let me just I think that brings us to the end of our.
So Jacqueline's question. So I'm still trying to understand fully the question, right? Jacqueline, you're still here, right?
Yeah. I have the ePortfolio. We have to submit it on Saturday.
Okay,
What I'm asking is,
could you stop the recording, Dr. Zafran?
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Let me end the session officially, and I think you guys could do that as well. So thank you everyone for attending and participating, and we look for, well, this session will be the recording of this session will be shared on our YouTube channel, so you can look for that there. If you haven't subscribed, definitely you might want to do so, so you're notified every time we place a new video on our channel. All right, and we're also on TikTok, we're also on Instagram, we're also on, am I missing one, Javid? Formerly Yammer. I can't remember the exact name of it now.
Viva Engage.
Thank you so much. And there's another platform I can't remember, X. All right. So you can look for us there, and or just visit our website. You'll see all our handles or names on the social media platforms. All right. Thank you once again, everyone. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow, where we look at action research as part of our teaching and learning week. All right. Have a great day, everyone.
right. So Javed, what I was asking is, in order for